The deep space antenna array hummed beneath a starlit sky, its massive dishes turning slowly as they searched the cosmos for signs of intelligent life. Dr. Naomi Wright sat in the control room, her dark eyes fixed on wavelength patterns that danced across her holographic display. 6 months of analyzing these strange crystalline signals from the Carina Nebula had led to this moment. "You're still here?" Dr. Harrison Reed's voice carried a note of concern as he entered the room, carrying 2 cups of coffee. His weathered face and salt and pepper hair spoke of decades spent listening to the stars. "The pattern changed again," Naomi said, accepting the coffee without taking her eyes off the display. "Look at this frequency shift. It's not random noise, Harrison. These are language markers." Harrison leaned closer, his expression skeptical. "We've been down this road before, Naomi. Remember the pulsar that everyone thought was alien communication? This is different." Naomi's fingers flew across the holographic interface, isolating specific wave patterns. "These signals are modulating in response to our deep space pings. Whatever's out there, it's trying to talk to us." Before Harrison could respond, the main display erupted with new data. Crystalline patterns emerged, shifting and flowing like liquid geometry. Naomi's heart raced as she recognized mathematical sequences embedded within the beautiful formations. "My God," Harrison whispered, "coffee forgotten." "You're right. This is a response." For hours, they worked to decode the message. The crystalline patterns seemed to operate on principles that defied conventional linguistics. But Naomi had spent years developing translation algorithms for non-human communication methods. It's not just language, she realized, watching the patterns pulse with increasing complexity. These are thought patterns. The crystalline structures aren't just carrying the message, they are the message. As dawn approached, their efforts paid off. The first clear translation appeared on their screens: "We are the Luminaris. We see you seeking. We wish to share knowledge." "Naomi," Harrison's voice was barely a whisper, "you just made first contact with an alien species." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. The Deep Space Communication Center became the focus of global attention. Teams of scientists and linguists worked around the clock to establish clearer communication with the Luminaris. Through their exchanges, they learned that the Luminaris were a crystalline-based life form, capable of storing and transmitting consciousness through complex geometric patterns. They had been watching Earth for centuries, waiting for humanity to develop the technology necessary for meaningful contact. "They don't just want to talk," Naomi explained during a briefing with global leaders. "They want to teach us." Their entire civilization is built on the principle of shared consciousness and knowledge. But not everyone welcomed the prospect of such intimate contact with an alien species. Protests erupted outside the facility, with signs warning against the dangers of alien influence. Security had to be increased as threats mounted. "People are afraid of what they don't understand," Harrison said one evening, watching the protesters on the security feeds. "And what the Luminaris are offering, it's beyond understanding for most." Naomi continued her work, despite the growing tension. Each day brought new insights into the Luminaris culture and capabilities. They shared knowledge freely, teaching humanity about technologies that seemed like magic. Then came the breakthrough that would change everything. During a routine communication session, Naomi discovered that the crystalline patterns could directly interface with human brainwave patterns. "It's not just communication," she told Harrison, her voice trembling with excitement. "It's communion. They can share their experiences, their memories, their very consciousness with us." The implications were staggering. The Luminaris weren't just offering humanity advanced technology, they were offering a bridge between two fundamentally different forms of life. As Naomi prepared for the first direct interface experiment, she couldn't help but wonder if humanity was ready for such a profound connection. But looking at the beautiful crystalline patterns flowing across her screen, she knew there was no turning back. "We're ready to begin the interface sequence," she announced, as Harrison monitored her vital signs. The crystalline patterns began to pulse in sync with her brainwaves. The last thing she heard before the connection took hold was Harrison's worried voice, "Be careful, Naomi. We're in uncharted territory now." Then the world dissolved into pure crystalline thought, and Naomi Wright began her journey as humanity's first bridge to an alien consciousness. The crystalline interface chamber hummed with an otherworldly resonance as Naomi Wright floated in the suspension field. Her mind danced through geometric patterns of pure thought, each facet revealing new aspects of Luminaris consciousness. Through the neural link, she felt the presence of Saren, her Luminaris counterpart, a being whose very essence was woven from living crystal. Neural patterns stable, Harrison reported, his voice seeming distant through the interface. Consciousness synchronization at 60% and climbing. The connection deepened, and Naomi experienced memories that weren't her own. She saw vast crystal cities floating in the void between stars, structures that served as both habitat and repository of countless generations of knowledge. Through Saren's crystalline perception, she understood how the Luminaris had transcended the boundaries between individual and collective consciousness. It's incredible, Naomi's thoughts translated directly into words on Harrison's monitors. They don't just store information in their crystal matrices, they live it. Every experience, every discovery becomes part of their shared consciousness. But as the interface continued, something unexpected happened. The crystalline patterns began to shift, forming new configurations that neither species had seen before. Naomi felt her own consciousness expanding, merging with Saren's in ways that defied explanation. Your mind, Saren's thoughts resonated through the connection, it creates patterns we have never encountered. Your capacity for individual creativity, it changes the very nature of our shared consciousness. Harrison's instruments began registering anomalous readings. Naomi, your neural patterns are shifting. They're beginning to mirror Luminaris crystalline structures. Through their merged consciousness, Naomi and Saren made a stunning discovery. Human brains, with their organic neural networks, could serve as natural interfaces with Luminaris crystal technology. The implications were staggering. We're not just communicating, Naomi realized, her thoughts cascading through crystalline pathways. We're evolving. Both species, changing, adapting to create something entirely new. The revelation sent shockwaves through both human and Luminaris society. Some saw it as the next step in evolution, a perfect synthesis of organic and crystalline consciousness. Others feared it would mean the end of human individuality. Dr. Elena Rostova, head of the Global Ethics Committee, called for an immediate halt to the interface experiments. We cannot risk losing our fundamental human nature in pursuit of alien knowledge, she argued during an emergency session. But Naomi and Harrison knew they couldn't stop now. The resonance protocol, as they called it, was already changing both species in profound ways. Through their shared consciousness, the Luminaris were learning about human emotions, creativity, and individual expression. In return, humans gained access to centuries of accumulated knowledge and experience. The protesters don't understand, Naomi told Harrison after another successful interface session. Her eyes now held a subtle crystalline quality, a physical manifestation of her repeated contact with Luminaris consciousness. This isn't about losing our humanity. It's about expanding it. Saren, maintaining a permanent presence in the facility through a crystal matrix, shared their perspective. Our species has long sought to understand the power of individual consciousness. Through you, we are learning the strength that comes from unique perspectives and experiences. As the experiments continued, they discovered that each successful interface created new neural crystalline patterns, expanding the possibilities for both species. The resonance protocol wasn't just a communication tool, it was becoming a bridge between two fundamentally different forms of existence. Harrison, watching the beautiful and terrifying transformation, couldn't help but wonder where it would lead. Are we ready for this level of change? He asked one evening, as they reviewed the latest interface data. Naomi touched the small crystal formation that had begun growing along her temple, a physical sign of her deepening connection with the Luminaris. Ready or not, it's already happening. The question is, will we embrace it or fight it? Through the crystal matrix, Saren's thoughts joined their conversation. Change brings fear, but it also brings possibility. Your species taught us that progress often requires stepping into the unknown. As they prepared for the next phase of experiments, none of them could have predicted the crisis that was about to test the limits of their newfound connection, a crisis that would force both species to question everything they thought they knew about consciousness itself. The crystalline monitors pulsed with activity, recording the ongoing transformation of human and Luminaris consciousness. In the interface chamber, Naomi floated between worlds, her mind expanding beyond the boundaries of normal human experience. Through it all, Harrison watched and waited, knowing that they were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in the history of both species. The first sign of trouble came as a whisper in the crystalline networks. Naomi felt it during a routine interface session, a discordant note in the usually harmonious flow of shared consciousness. Through their connection, she sensed Saren's immediate concern. Something is wrong, the Luminaris consciousness pulsed through their link. The patterns, they're destabilizing. Harrison's monitors erupted with alerts as global communication networks began failing one by one. Satellite systems crashed, quantum computers faltered, and even the most basic electronic devices started behaving erratically. It's like some kind of quantum interference, Harrison muttered, his fingers flying over emergency backup systems. But I've never seen anything like this pattern before. Through her enhanced perception, Naomi recognized something familiar in the chaos. These aren't random disruptions, she said, the crystalline formation at her temple pulsing with intense light. They're echoes, reflections of consciousness itself. The crisis deepened as more systems failed worldwide. Hospitals lost vital equipment, transportation networks ground to a halt, and panic began to spread. The protesters outside the facility grew more aggressive, convinced that the Luminaris interface experiments were to blame. Dr. Elena Rostova appeared on global broadcasts, demanding an immediate end to all contact with the alien species. We warned about the dangers of merging human and alien consciousness. Now we're seeing the consequences. But Naomi and Saren had discovered something that others couldn't yet see. Through their shared consciousness, they recognized that the disruptions weren't an attack or a malfunction, they were growing pains. The quantum fields that carried both your digital signals and our crystalline thoughts, Saren explained through their link, they're trying to evolve. To accommodate both forms of consciousness simultaneously. Working around the clock, Naomi and Harrison began to understand the true nature of the crisis. The increasing interface between human and Luminaris consciousness had created new quantum patterns that existing systems couldn't process. Like a child learning to walk, reality itself was stumbling as it attempted to support this new form of existence. We need to guide it, Naomi realized. Not fight it or shut it down, but help it find its balance. Using the resonance protocol, they began the dangerous process of attempting to stabilize the quantum fields. Naomi's partially crystallized consciousness served as a bridge, while Saren's vast knowledge provided the framework for understanding the complex interactions. Harrison monitored their vital signs with growing concern. Your neural patterns are approaching critical levels, he warned. Any further strain could cause permanent damage to both of you. But they couldn't stop. The disruptions were getting worse, and governments worldwide were preparing to take drastic action. Military forces were being mobilized, and there was talk of using experimental weapons to sever the connection with the Luminaris completely. Through their deepening bond, Naomi and Saren made a desperate gamble. Instead of trying to suppress the new quantum patterns, they would embrace them fully, allowing their merged consciousness to guide the evolution of the fields. Trust in what we've built, Saren's thoughts resonated through their connection. Human creativity, Luminaris harmony, together they form something greater than either alone. As their consciousness expanded into the quantum fields, Naomi felt herself becoming something more than human, while Saren's crystalline nature took on aspects of organic fluidity. The boundaries between them blurred, creating a new template for existence itself. Around the world, the chaos began to subside. Communication systems came back online, but they were different, more resilient, more adaptive. The quantum fields had found their balance, shaped by the union of human and Luminaris consciousness. "Look at these readings," Harrison breathed, studying the data flowing across his screens. "The new patterns, they're self-stabilizing. It's like the network itself has become conscious." As Naomi and Saren gradually separated their consciousness, both forever changed by the experience, they realized they had crossed a threshold from which there could be no return. Humanity's technology and the Luminaris' crystalline networks had become part of something larger, a living, growing system that could support both forms of existence. Outside the facility, the protests began to quiet as people witnessed their devices working better than ever before. The fear of the unknown was gradually being replaced by curiosity about the possibilities this new era might bring. "We've done more than solve a crisis," Naomi told Harrison, watching the sun rise over the antenna array. "We've proven that different forms of consciousness can not only coexist but create something greater together." Through the crystal matrix, Saren's thoughts joined them. "This is only the beginning. The real question is, are both our species ready for what comes next?" The crystalline formation on Naomi's temple pulsed gently, a reminder that she now existed somewhere between human and Luminaris, a living bridge between two forms of consciousness. In that moment, she understood that their greatest challenges, and greatest discoveries, still lay ahead. The integration facility had changed in the weeks following the quantum crisis. Crystalline growths now adorned the walls, pulsing gently with shared thoughts and memories. Naomi stood before the Global Science Council, her partially crystallized features drawing wary glances from the assembled leaders. "What you're proposing is unprecedented," Council Chairman Marcus Thorne declared, his holographic presence flickering with barely concealed concern. "Full integration of Luminaris crystal technology into human neural networks. The public will never accept it." "They already are accepting it," Naomi countered, gesturing to the data streams flowing through the chamber. "Every device connected to the new quantum fields is already part of this evolution. We're just making it official." Harrison stepped forward, his own interface implant glinting under the lights. "The data is undeniable. Human consciousness is naturally adapting to crystalline integration. Fighting it now would be like fighting gravity." But resistance was growing on both sides. A faction of Luminaris, led by an elder consciousness called Voss, argued that too much interaction with human thought patterns was destabilizing their ancient ways. Meanwhile, human separatist groups were forming, pledging to remain pure and unaugmented. Saren's thoughts rippled through the crystal matrix. Change always brings division before unity. It is the nature of growth. The situation reached a critical point when Dr. Elena Rostova published research suggesting that prolonged crystal integration was erasing human emotional responses. Her evidence seemed compelling, until Naomi and Harrison discovered the truth. "She's manipulated the data," Harrison announced during an emergency council session. "These readings don't show emotion loss, they show emotion evolution. The crystal integration is actually enhancing human emotional capacity, not diminishing it." Through their shared consciousness, Naomi and Saren had discovered something extraordinary. The crystal matrices weren't overriding human consciousness, they were providing a framework for it to expand in ways previously thought impossible. "Watch," Naomi demonstrated, connecting to the facility's main crystal array. The room filled with visible manifestations of her emotional state, beautiful, complex patterns that merged human feeling with Luminaris precision. "This isn't just about technology or evolution," she explained as the council watched in awe. "It's about reaching the next level of existence, one where thought, emotion, and consciousness exist in perfect harmony." But not everyone was convinced. Voss and his followers attempted to sever their connection to Earth's crystal networks, causing localized quantum disturbances that threatened the stability they'd worked so hard to achieve. "They fear losing their identity," Saren explained, their consciousness intertwined with Naomi's as they worked to stabilize the disruptions. "Just as some humans fear losing their humanity." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Rostova herself, after witnessing the true potential of the integration, underwent the procedure. Her transformation became a turning point in public opinion. "I was wrong," she announced to a global audience, her new crystalline features catching the light. "This isn't the end of humanity, it's humanity transcending its limitations while keeping its essential nature intact." Harrison and Naomi worked tirelessly to refine the integration process, making it safer and more accessible to those who chose it. The crystal formations adapted to each individual's unique consciousness, creating patterns as diverse as humanity itself. "Look at this," Harrison called Naomi to his lab one evening. On his screens, the latest integration data showed something remarkable. The crystal matrices aren't just accepting human consciousness, they're learning from it. Evolving. Through their connection, Saren confirmed what they were seeing. The luminaris themselves were changing, their rigid crystalline patterns becoming more fluid, more adaptable. The integration was transforming both species in ways no one had predicted. As opposition gradually gave way to acceptance, Naomi and Saren began planning the next phase of their work. The quantum fields that connected Earth's technology had become a living network of consciousness, capable of supporting both human and luminaris thought patterns. "We're approaching a threshold," Naomi told the council during their final review. "A point where the distinction between our species becomes less about our differences and more about our shared potential." The crystalline growths throughout the facility pulsed with combined consciousness, human creativity and emotion flowing through luminaris precision and harmony. It was a preview of what was to come, a glimpse of a future where consciousness itself had no bounds. As the sun set over the facility, Naomi stood with Harrison, watching new integration volunteers arrive. Each would become part of something greater while remaining uniquely themselves, a paradox that only their evolved consciousness could fully appreciate. "Ready for what comes next?" Harrison asked, his interface implant synchronizing with the facility's crystals. Naomi touched the elaborate formation at her temple, feeling the pulse of countless connected minds, human and luminaris, separate yet unified. "The real question is the universe ready for us?" The aftermath of the reactor incident transformed both humans and Nexians. The ship's corridors, once sterile and rigid, now pulsed with swirling patterns of combined energy as both species learned to coexist in new ways. Dr. Stone's medical bay became a laboratory of emotional discovery as Nexians experienced their first tastes of joy, sorrow, and everything in between. "Their neural patterns are remarkable," Dr. Stone explained to Dominic, showing him scans of their Nexian allies. "It's like watching a frozen river thaw, emotion flowing into paths that logic carved." Cynthia and Vex, once opponents, now work together to help their people navigate this transformation. Vex's experience in the reactor had shattered his purely logical worldview, leaving him struggling with newfound feelings. "The simplest emotions overwhelm me," Vex admitted during one of their group sessions. His patterns showed embarrassment, a particularly complex emotion he was still learning to process. "How do humans maintain functionality while feeling so much?" "We don't always," Dominic replied honestly. "Sometimes emotions consume us, drive us to make mistakes. But they also inspire us to achieve impossible things." The real challenge lay ahead. The Nexian homeworld had received their transmissions, and the response was divided. Some welcomed the possibility of emotional awakening, seeing it as salvation for their dying species. Others viewed it as a threat to their perfect logical order. "They're sending ships," Cynthia announced one morning, her patterns troubled. "Both those who support us and those who would stop us. We must choose our next actions carefully." "No," Dominic countered, "we must choose them passionately." They gathered in the ship's main hall, humans and emotionally awakened Nexians, to decide their future. The scene would have been impossible weeks ago, energy beings displaying complex emotional patterns, humans comfortable in their presence, all united by their shared experience. "Our logical society stands at a crossroads," Vex addressed the assembly, his patterns showing the balanced blend of reason and emotion he'd learned to maintain. But perhaps that is where we have always belonged. Dr. Stone stepped forward, presenting their research. The integration of emotion doesn't require abandoning logic. In fact, our studies show that emotion can enhance rational decision-making, providing intuitive insights that pure logic might miss. The question, Cynthia added, is whether we force this awakening on our people, or let them choose it for themselves. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, they were using logical debate to discuss emotional freedom. But perhaps that was the point, emotion and logic didn't have to be enemies. Dominic watched the discussion unfold, seeing how far both species had come. Humans had learned to understand their emotions better by helping the Nexians discover them. The Nexians had found that logic and emotion could coexist, even strengthen each other. We offer choice, he finally said, rising to address the assembly. We show your people what's possible when logic and emotion work together. Those who want to awaken can do so. Those who don't, won't be forced. The decision was made. As the opposing Nexian ships approached, they prepared their response. Not with weapons or shields, but with something more powerful, the truth of their shared experience. They broadcast everything, the failed experiment, the emotional awakening, the reactor incident, and most importantly, the harmony they'd found between logic and feeling. Let their people see and decide for themselves. The response was beyond anything they could have predicted. Ship after ship of Nexians requested to experience the awakening. Those who opposed them found their logical arguments crumbling in the face of their people's choice. Cynthia stood with Dominic as they watched the ships dock, her patterns showing the complex emotion of hope. "We were right," she said softly. "This was never supposed to happen, it was supposed to be better than we imagined." Dominic smiled, feeling the weight of their journey in her words. "That's the thing about emotions, Cynthia. They rarely follow the expected path. But they always lead us home." As humans and Nexians mingled, sharing their experiences and emotions, Dominic realized they had created something unprecedented, a bridge between logic and feeling, between two vastly different species. They had proven that the greatest discoveries happen not when we follow the expected path, but when we dare to feel our way forward into the unknown. The experiment that began as a study of human emotion had become a revolution of the heart, transforming two species and proving that sometimes, the most logical choice is to embrace the illogical, beautiful chaos of feeling.